Today I want to talk to you about a simple change that can reduce long COVID and chronic fatigue symptoms. Now, it's simple, but unfortunately it's not easy because it requires a lot of practice and some mental gymnastics to get it right. And I might get a bit of a battering in the comments for this, but knowing how well it worked for me, I'm not going to shy away from telling you about it. I totally did believe it myself at first, and it really was worth it. The symptoms connected to my nervous system reduced by around 25%, and my flare-ups were less frequent and shorter in duration. Now, I hinted at the idea in my video, Don't Panic About Long COVID Symptoms. I'll put a link in the description. And it's a day-to-day example of how I manage sudden flare-ups and push myself back into recovery. Now, before I get to the good stuff, I just wanted to say how lovely it is to read all your comments and questions. It's so encouraging to know that my videos are having an impact or even being seen, because that's why I'm here. There's so many people out there suffering from long COVID, and where we are right now, there's no magic pill. And, my doctors didn't seem to know how to help me. Maybe yours don't either. It's down to us to help each other and help ourselves. So the foundations of what I'm going to talk to you about today began in the 1940s with Carl Rogers. He created person-centered therapy, which emphasizes acceptance, empathy, and reflective listening over the interpretation of unconscious drives or behaviors, which is what they used to do. And then in the 80s, Stephen Hayes took this further and he created acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, which aims to increase psychological flexibility by accepting challenging experiences and developing mindfulness. Then in 2007, Dr. Russ Harris, an ACT therapist and trainer, he published The Happiness Trap, How to Stop Struggling and Start Living. And within it, he talks about the struggle switch. I'll put a link in the description for that. If you're having trouble reading with brain fog, then try the audiobook or the flashcards. So I can hear you asking, how does this struggle switch work and how does it relate to chronic illness? The struggle switch, it's like an internal on-off button in our minds that gets flipped on when we experience something uncomfortable, whether it's pain, anxiety, sadness, or frustration. And when the switch is off, we feel discomfort, but it's manageable and it doesn't consume us. When that struggle switch gets flipped on, though, everything changes. Instead of just experiencing pain, we begin to struggle against it. We start fighting against the discomfort and telling ourselves, this shouldn't be happening, or I can't take this anymore. Our pain becomes worse now because we're not only dealing with the original discomfort, but we're also experiencing stress, anxiety, and frustration above the discomfort itself. We're stuck in this loop of suffering where the struggle adds to the problem. It's exponential. So let's talk about how this relates to chronic illness. For those living with chronic conditions, the struggle switch is just a constant companion. When you have a chronic illness, discomfort, whether it's physical or emotional, it comes with the territory. You may have pain, fatigue, or other symptoms that just won't go away. It's easy to get caught in the mindset of, why is this happening to me? Or it's not fair. And that struggle can flip the switch on over and over again. Let's take pain as an example. You wake up one morning with a flare up and immediately your struggle switch flips on. You start worrying, what if this never goes away? How will I get through the day? Pain is already there, but now your body is in a state of high alert. The tension amplifies your pain, causing even more discomfort. You're no longer just experiencing pain. Now you're battling the emotional storm that comes with it. Fear, frustration, and worst of all, helplessness. It's the same with fatigue. Your body feels like it's dragging, your legs feel like lead. And even small tasks can just feel monumental. Instead of accepting that today is going to be a low energy day, the struggle switch turns on and thoughts flood in. I should be able to do more. I'm lazy if I don't push through. And you begin to feel guilty and ashamed. And now your low energy is compounded by an emotional struggle that just drains you even further. So how do we turn this struggle switch off? And this is where mindfulness and acceptance, which are the cornerstones of ACT, come into play. It's not about ignoring or pretending that your symptoms don't exist. That won't work. Instead, it's about learning how to sit with the discomfort rather than fighting against it. So when I first heard about mindfulness the first cornerstone of ACT. I thought, my mind's quite full enough already, thank you very much. But now I know I was just joking about it because I had a resistance to the idea of it. What I learned is that it's the practice of observing your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment. And when we're mindful, we notice the pain and the fatigue or the frustration, but we don't add a layer of, I shouldn't be feeling this. We simply observe what's happening. I'm feeling tired. My body hurts right now. Instead of, "Urgh." This helps keep the struggle switch from flipping on because we're not resisting what's happening in the moment. We're accepting it for what it just is. And then there's self-compassion. This is about treating yourself with kindness when you're going through a tough time. Instead of berating yourself for not being able to function at 100%, self-compassion says, I'm doing the best I can with the energy and the resources that I have today. People with long COVID very often say that they used to be overachievers, they used to be workaholics, they used to be people pleasers. And telling yourself off for not being able to give 100% when you're ill is not compassionate to yourself. It's a softer approach that prevents the struggle switch from triggering shame or guilt. And really, haven't we all had more than enough of that? And finally, there's acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or resigning yourself to a life of suffering. It means recognizing that chronic illness is part of your experience. You don't have to fight it every single step of the way. So how does this work day to day? Imagine you're having a flare-up. Your joints are aching. Your energy is low. Your mind starts going into overdrive. I can't take this. I was supposed to do so much today. This is unfair. Instead of letting the struggle switch take over, take a deep breath. Notice the pain, but don't judge it. It's there, and it's hard, but it's part of your body's reality right now. Remind yourself that you can still take care of yourself in this moment. Maybe that means resting, doing a smaller version of your to-do list, or simply just giving yourself permission to feel how you feel without that added layer of struggle. Take the day off if you can. And if you're battling with fatigue, instead of struggling to be productive despite feeling exhausted, you can choose acceptance. Acknowledge that today you might not have the energy you hope for. Adjust your expectations, practice self-compassion, and recognize that it is okay to rest. Don't have to fight against your body to prove your worth. So the struggle switch is an incredibly useful tool. It worked so well for me, it really did. Living with chronic condition is already tough enough, and the added layer of emotional and mental struggle can make it feel just totally unbearable. But by learning to turn off the switch through mindfulness, self-compassion, and acceptance, you can reduce your suffering and find a greater sense of peace, even on difficult days. However, the struggle switch was not the only part of my recovery. There were plenty of other strategies that worked, and each one just chipped away at the condition, and it just gave me a little bit more of my life back each time. And because the struggle switch is about acceptance, and if I'd fully accepted my symptoms and my condition, I'd never have got better from long COVID and chronic fatigue. I wouldn't be here right now telling you how I recovered. I'd still be in bed or making a me-shaped dent on the sofa. If you want to know about the other things, they're in my full recovery story, and I'll put a link in the description. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe. It's tremendously encouraging for me, and it means that more people will stumble onto my story. So your journey back from long COVID, it does start with you. You are not your illness, and your worth is not determined by how much you can push through. Some days will be harder than others. What matters is how you relate to the experience, whether you choose to struggle against it or accept it in the now without judgment and care for yourself with kindness. I'm not saying you shouldn't fight to get better. You should. You should fight for the things that you can control, the food that you eat, the sleep that you get, regulating your nervous system, healing your trauma. Whatever it is that you can do, you should do, because that means that you're moving forward.